the work we do today is going to pay off in 12 to 18 months from now. Yeah. So that's what I preach to my team, that put your head down, do the work, and trust the process. And it's going to pay off in 12 to 18 months. That's a long time from now. Yeah. Right? You just got to trust that process and do it.
Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate Excellence Podcast. Today's guest is a true Northeast Florida native who brings more than a decade of local real estate expertise to every client he serves, with deep-rooted market knowledge and a passion for helping people navigate the home buying and selling journey. He's made a name for himself specializing in luxury homes and condos along the beaches throughout Duval, St. Johns, Nassau, and Clay counties. Known for holding himself to the highest professional standards, his results and his reputation speak for themselves. Beyond real estate, he's a dedicated family man, avid outdoorsman, and an active supporter of the Boys and Girls Club. Whether he's surfing, golfing, fishing, or cheering on his Jacksonville Jaguars, he brings the same passion to life as he does to his business. Let's welcome Willie Lane of the Willie Lane Group, Compass Realty, to the show.
Hey,
welcome.
Thank
Glad
you,
to have you.
Hey, excited to be here.
Yeah, really interested in your story. You know, Doug, I try to dig in as much as possible, so I obviously have some really creative questions. But like you said, you don't have LinkedIn, so that cripples me a little bit. So we'll be creative. But you've had success, and I think there's going to be a lot of agents that want to hear your story.
Cool.
Yeah,
I'm ready to tell it.
So I always like to kick off with an easy one. 18-year-old Willie, what's he envisioning himself doing as a career? Where were you at, and what were you doing?
Oh boy. 18 years old, off to college. Yeah, didn't went to a good school, not a good student. And I didn't have a whole lot of hope. I didn't know had no idea what I was going to do. But between my junior and senior year, I had an internship selling advertisements here locally. It was for a UNF publication, and I learned a lot. I went through a sales training program at UNC, and we spent the whole summer selling advertisements, and that really taught me a lot about the sales process. It taught me that I probably didn't want to sit in an office all day.
Right.
And, so when it came time to graduate, I kind of I thought it'd be smart to have something lined up before I actually graduated, and then, oh no, now what? And so I was going through some interviews with some different sales agencies and positions, and went and interviewed with, my former brokerage, the CEO there, and thought, hell, why not? And I had no idea what I was getting into, and here we are. so I tell you,
you got in real estate very early in a career. We do have some really young real estate agents around. I've said numerous times in 4 years I've been doing it. Obviously, when I grew up, stereotypical real estate agent was generally an older woman, even older men. Most of them, obviously, in second parts of career, which we have a lot of successful people that have done that. They've been in corporate America for 10, 15, 20 years and then get into real estate. But what's it like, 22, 23 years old, you don't own your own place yet. Most people don't even know how to spell like mortgage, right? I mean, what was that feeling like walking in that first day?
That was tough. I was living at home. My parents, I moved back from college back into my home and mom and dad's house. And so that was, going into the office. Here I am trying to help someone with one of their biggest purchases or biggest assets of their lifetimes. And I don't own that for myself, right? And I was young. It's hard. How do you trust a kid, just fresh out of college? I was by far the youngest in my office.
Right.
And shortly after I joined, a few other younger folks joined the industry and kind of trickled in. But at that time, it was kind of weird. That was 12, 13 years ago. So it was different then. It was the white-haired old ladies and a few guys here and there, but mostly females. And
so tell us a little about that first year. I mean, what did they do for you, especially coming in? Like you said, you don't even like, how do you spell mortgage? Your house, okay? Because we all been there, 22 years old, and then you weren't even thinking about doing this, and your mom wasn't doing it, so you just you're thrown in there. What are some of the things that helped you get started? Did you have a slow start, or were you able to jump out?
No, it's interesting. I see some now. These newer agents. Some will have just a quick start, quick success, and that's great. It's awesome. I had a very different start to my career. My first year, I probably spent as much as I made. I had a few sales on my belt in a year. And the next year I made a few bucks, and then the next year it kind of started to take off. It's just, that's kind of the first couple of years of it was really slow.
Yeah.
And overcoming the obstacles of being young, and how do you trust this kid to sell me a house?
So this is, because obviously when you go back, we're talking about like 2011, 12, 13?
13.
Okay.
12 or 13, yeah.
Obviously it sounds like, mom and dad were supporting your quest.
Sure.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
From that standpoint, because you stuck with it. You had some grit, because obviously I'm sure in that first couple of years where things weren't, rolling, you were, should I do something else?
Oh, I mean, for first 5 years, I thought that. Even when I was making money in real estate, I'd sell a house and then not have a contract that's in place right now. And I'm thinking, am I going to have a side job, or am I going to have to find another career? And that really kind of stuck with me for quite a while. And even when I had more success, I still kind of had those thoughts, and didn't really go away for, I don't know, for first 5 years, I would say, easily. Yeah. So that certainly was on my mind for years. I'd sell a house and then not know where the next piece of business was coming from. That was an uneasy feeling. But then you just have the faith, put your head down and work. And I tell my team nowadays, I tell them that story. Mm-hmm. It takes a while. This is the long game we're playing. And everyone now, sure, you may have a need for financial resources, and therefore you may need to have a second job or whatever it is. But if you can stick it out, put your head down, roll up the sleeves, and trust the process, it works. The work we do today is going to pay off in 12 to 18 months from now. Yeah. So that's what I preach to my team, that put your head down, do the work, and trust the process. And it's going to pay off in 12 to 18 months. That's a long time from now. Yeah. But you just got to trust that process and do it.
If you were to go back, because I think this is a very interesting topic, because again, we do have a lot of young agents, and I think it's advantageous in our market. There's still a huge demand. Only the top 25% are actually doing deals, and really we know that probably 5% are actually doing 90% of the deals, 5% that are out there. So a young person can enter this game and compete. So looking back at that first 12, 24 months, what are some of the things that you would have done differently, that knowing what you know now?
Well, that's a good question. I think what I would have done differently, I think I really kind of I preached to my team what I did, and because that seemed to work out. At least I think I'm successful.
Well, could you have done it better? I mean, I'm sure there's some things you could say.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Well, I started off slow. I try to coach my team into saying, well, let me fast track. I really hope you not do what I did, I guess, and I think I probably would have. Good question, Tracy.
Well, it is a great dig deep question. Anyone listening to the podcast, I mean, especially 12, 13 years, you're still young, so your mind's still growing, not like mine. I'm 20 years older than you, but to look back, especially, new agents coming in, or like you said, if you're going to expand the, Willie Lane Group and bring in some of these young hotshots, how can you get them off to a great start? Because most people are not going to last as long as you had. You had the grit to last the 24 more months before, you started going, oh, okay, I might have something here.
Good question there.
Yeah.
And so I guess I would say that, when you're a new agent starting out, I didn't have a team member. Or a team leader, I should say. I didn't have a team leader. I had a mentor in my office. It was the office broker. And Don Klein was, the reason I stuck with the business. I owe a lot to him. But, I'd say, besides that, though, it felt bad walking into his office every day and bothering him. He's got a whole office of agents to manage, and there was a lot of us there. Yeah. In a tough market coming out of the recession. So I think it's those agents who can find quick success, maybe latch on to a team. Go find a team that you trust, work with people you like to work with, and hopefully they can provide some leads that's helpful. But the right kind of training, but you have 24-hour access to someone that's closer to you than maybe just an office broker. Right. And I think it's pretty important to have that.
Almost like a mentor, someone you can pick up the phone that will pick up.
I tell my team, hey, you reach out to me, I'm going to drop what I'm doing to get to you. That's priority, is your success, your career, I'm really investing in. So I want to make sure that I'm fast-tracking you, getting you to where you want to be in your career. And so whatever that takes, but I'm going to be full access for you. And my years of experience, I think, is certainly going to, I hope, get you there quicker than otherwise. There's a lot of obstacles we face, and, it's helpful to have someone that's going to hold your hand, really.
Right. Based on how you started, And imagine if when you're starting with someone is even as someone who's already had a career and then coming to real estate, but just new to real estate. Mm-hmm. Hoping that they're going to set a schedule, or do you say, hey, man, this is how we want to start the business? Tell us what your ideology is, because I think there's very successful people get in and right away they've had corporate, maybe whatever their corporate experience, so they come in, they're used to working 9 to 5, so they come in and work 9 to 5. There's others which I think fail more often, are a little footloose and fancy free. They're not really holding themselves to some sort of schedule, getting certain things done during the day that you need to do to build that 12 or 18 month window that you were talking about. How are you teaching your young agents that are coming into your group? What's your mindset on that to get them off the ground?
I've had some that have had that where they're kind of regimented already from a previous career or whatever it is. They just better habits, daily work life. Others are really not. I mean, they came from not working to now this. And so they ask a lot of questions, and how do I fill my day up? And I tell them, we provide, at least my team, we've kind of have our systems and processes in place. We put them on paper. We have an onboarding process, and we have, I'd say, trainings, but we have a few training pieces that will get you started, and those training pieces include daily steps for success. And the daily steps for success are, easy. It's not going to fill up your entire day, but, you have a few handful of things, tasks to do daily, right? And it's really the basics, going back to old school real estate, or really maybe old school sales in general. And then from there, I say, you need to be having coffee, lunch, and happy hour or dinner or whatever it is.
With somebody.
That's 3 meetings a day, essentially. But even if it's a friend or whoever, it doesn't really matter. You go have a coffee, a lunch, and a beer with somebody. And that's going to fill up your day. So in between that, you do some of those daily habits for success, and that's a day right there. And do it again the next day.
That not that that's rocket science, but it's actually brilliant. Because I don't know what the sales book is, but there's one out there that talks about do not eat lunch alone. It's the whole thing. So you're having lunch with somebody every day. But it makes total sense. Wake up and call a friend you haven't seen in a while, whatever, your neighbor, and go have coffee with them and spend 45 minutes with them, whatever, at Starbucks or these nice coffee shops we have around. And get to know each other a little bit better, but also now you're starting to bond and starting to create a relationship. And maybe your neighbor who you wave to every day, but you don't have a relationship with them. Just say, hey, you know what? I'd love to have coffee with you, or lunch, or obviously, like you said, grab a beer or something at the end of the day. I mean, if you did that every day. There was a trainer over here at Landmark Title about a year or so ago. He came over from the West Coast. He's successful over there. And he was talking about he had a Taco Tuesday every Tuesday night at his house, but he made a thing, it could never be the same person. He had to invite someone different to Taco Tuesday every Tuesday night in his house. It became a ritual. But he started to bond. You break bread with someone, you start to bond with them.
That's true. Exactly right. Even just waving to your neighbor, like you said, down in the street, and maybe spending the extra several minutes in the driveway or out on the road just talking to them. And I think that the more you do that, and again, it doesn't come as easy to some. And maybe it didn't come as easy to me. It's all kind of learned. You can learn. So I think, yeah, exactly right. I haven't read all the sales books and the real estate books, and I'm just sort of like, this is all a trial and error. And for me, it's taking a much longer process to get where I am now, but those are easy tools for your daily success, daily habits for success, I should say.
Well, and you are 100% right from the standpoint that it's not easy for everyone to do that, in creating that relationship. But if you have enough guts to say, hey, you know what, let's grab coffee tomorrow, next week, Monday before work or whatever. They know why you're sitting down. I mean, that's to me, I think that's just a signal. Hey, I want to get to know you, because the reality is you're not selling. It's like they don't do a mortgage every day. They don't buy a house every day. So there's nothing for them to buy or sell. We're not, we're not selling something that they would buy at that moment in time typically. But you are getting to know, and obviously at the end to say, hey, I appreciate you. I wanted to let you know what I'm doing and how passionate, because I know I think. One of the John Maxwell's, and I use this one all the time, I think it's 25 ways to influence people, is introducing people to other people, and ask them to introduce you to some of their friends, either whoever it may be, casually or whatever. But now they know, hey, my real estate friend across the street,
Exactly right. And really, it's, you don't want to go into the coffee, lunch, or beer, or whatever it is, and have an agenda of trying to sell them on something. I mean, really, the key to this is being genuine, and allowing them. You want someone to trust you as much as possible. We need to be trustworthy and express that. But the way to do that is be genuine and ask them about them. The best conversationalists are
how to win friends and influence people.
You just ask them a question and get someone else to talk.
Yeah.
And just listen. And then ask them a follow-up question on what they just talked about. It's just, and it's not as easy as, it's easier said than done, I should say.
Yeah.
But again, those are
I think a lot of people, when you are, the first person is what I call breaking the ice, but you make the gesture. Now that ice is broken, and then you open up, and then people, there is that first, people are a lot of whatever it is, here and there. But as soon as someone just reaches out and just breaks that ice and says, let's have coffee or let's have lunch or whatever. Yeah. Let's go back, so your first couple of years, you're kind of trudging along. How did you handle the age thing? Was the age an experience, something that had to be something that was in the back of your mind, and something that you had to obviously protect your client from knowing that you had it in the back of your mind, right?
Exactly right. No, totally. It was in the back of my mind, absolutely. And again, protecting that from them not realizing that is my subconscious is overcoming because I'm young, and how do you trust me?
Right.
Like, how are they going to trust me if I'm subconscious about that? So no, it was totally. I was young, inexperienced. And I think the one things that made me feel more confident going into meetings was having the backing of. I mean, at the time was Berkshire Hathaway. I thought was the number one in the game. The number one brokerage, or at least it was Prudential, then Berkshire Hathaway at my time. But that felt good, knowing I'm with at least a powerhouse in the game. That someone's going to have my back. There's going to be if there's an issue, I've got and we got to get a house attorney. But we had great brokers, great training. Great the highest producing agents in town at the time were in our office, and so that felt good to know that I can walk in the office and maybe ask a question to someone else that knows what they're doing. Right. But to the image to a client was, and I had some actually tell me, hey, well, they trusted Berkshire Hathaway, they trusted the name, and so that helped them, I think, trust me more than they otherwise probably would have. I also dressed nice. I was wearing a damn suit. Yeah. Tracy, I was wearing a suit every day, man. I was wearing, and I'm in t-shirt and shorts today, but I do still dress up. But I was doing that every day. At 9 to 5, I was wearing, button-down slacks. And,
as a young person, you have to look the part.
You do. And I did that. I was door knocking on Saturdays, sweating in my suit, And that was the first couple of years in the business. It's weird, and I may look back on that and think, at least I put the time in, And
for a young person, you have a sphere, but your sphere is mostly filled up from other people your age who are just trying to get out in their careers and really may not be ready to buy a home yet and so forth. And I imagine, did you feel the family and maybe some of your parents' friends and so forth, let's see what this kid does, see if he sticks with it long enough before we toss him some business?
They still do that, Tracy. My family's well plugged in here, and we're a long-time Jacksonvillians. They've been here for forever, and they've got a great name in town. And my parents have a great network. I'm not sure if I have a piece of business from them still. Maybe one or two, but it's funny. They, I'm like, oh, come on, this is a big source of business right here, and I'm still waiting. So I think that's exactly true. Where they sat back and were like, they saw me grow up, and they're like, let's just see what this kid does. Yeah. Exactly right. It's funny. So I had to make my way with my own clients and my own sphere, my own network, meeting new folks. Making friends with strangers, and that's how I built the business. Was really, I'd like to say, it was doing a lot of business from my network of family here in town, but it was really more so me getting out there and doing it, which was out of my comfort zone.
So, some people might have a quick start because they do tap into that. Mm-hmm. Being a young person is a little different. Yeah. And, building up and doing some of those things, shaking hands and meeting people, all of a sudden, so you're in roughly your third year before you really start to see a consistent pace. So we're at 2013, 14 now. Yep. Yeah. So housing industry, just to give everyone perspective that may not realize this, I've mentioned this on the show before, when we had the collapse in 7 and 8, the housing industry, new construction, went under any previous 50-year low. So 50 years prior to that we went below that low. So we created a new low. It did not get back up to the equivalent low until 2014. So you entered at a time where things were starting to rise, but very slowly.
Exactly. Yeah. It was a time where there weren't many agents. I think so many had left the industry. And, I came in at a time, one of the youngest, by far the youngest. There's a few veterans around. And, but then we had some trickle in after I had arrived to the industry. But yeah, it was a time where, my whole career, real estate has been going up. And that's a great time to get into time to get in. So I was lucky for that, timing wise, really graduation and then just right into it. There's no breaks.
It wasn't too fast. Like, if you entered in 2020, 21, crazy, where you kind of got spoiled. And then when they pull the rug out, you're like, oh my God, what's going on? The world's coming to an end. Mm-hmm. You came in where things are just starting to rise at enough speed to get your bike going.
Exactly right. Yeah, it was. And I was obviously having a slow start because as I was young and we just had everything we talked about. But that was, at least it was on the rise. We were still doing the basics of real estate. It wasn't putting a sticky note on the door and selling it within 24 hours like it was like 5 years ago or 4 years ago or whatever. Right. So, we were doing the basics and being able to sell, but prices it was like the normal increase of 3% annually, right, or whatever. So, yeah, that was a good time to enter.
What are some of imagine, a couple things have evolved over this time too, is the use of social media and obviously, the internet in general, obviously is, improving every single day. So you're kind of in that wind as well. What are some things, you talk about that, it's like some of those things you were, maybe doing at the beginning, you slowly have tweaked and, and obviously you'll continue to, I think we always got to continue to tweak what we're doing. But some of the things that you started, or maybe weren't doing a lot of then, but you are now, and how you kind of progress from the standpoint of using technology, social media, and those other things for, advertising, top of mind type of.
Sure. So to social media, that was a tool that I realized that was helpful. I was posting on my own personal Facebook page. I don't even know if we had Instagram at the time. I really don't. I don't think it was.
Not at the beginning. No. Yeah.
If it was, I wasn't on it right away.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't use it very often. It just come out.
Yeah.
I was on Facebook and I was, an occasional Instagram post, I suppose. But yeah, Facebook was a thing then, and I'd post, I started work at Prudential Network Realty, and then I'd post a Saturday picture of me at the desk doing desk time, open house, and I just didn't use it as the tool that we do today. It was just really like me posting on my personal page, as you would post about, Tracy out, like, having lunch at whatever place.
Right, yeah.
And so that, though, I learned my network was on social media, right? Not my parents' friends and network, but mine were. And they would see that and associate Willie Real Estate. That became sort of synonymous, and that's what I realized started to work. I would see buddies out, and we hadn't seen each other in whatever time, They'd ask about real estate. And I tell my team members now, I preach to them, like, don't go in a party and start talking about real estate. You want to be asked, how's the market doing? That's the one question you want. So be ready for a 30-second pitch.
That's kind of the test that you're doing the right things.
So you want someone to see you and think, real estate. Yeah. That's the goal, is to go out there. And so for the longest time, I had my personal page sort of as my business page too, which we've done away with now. My personal pages, which are public, and I still kind of post about real estate on there. Mm-hmm. But I have a business page dedicated to my real estate, to our team, our brand, our brokerage and all that. And we post daily. But at the time, it was really trying to be my name synonymous with real estate. You think Willie, you think real estate, or you see me and you immediately would ask me a question offhand, not knowing it, and just that's exactly what I was going for, and achieved it. And that was a good feeling. So I preach, you wanted the question, Tracy. You wanted to be asked, how's the mortgage business?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How are rates? What are rates doing today?
People are going to come up to you.
That's all you want and need.
Yeah. Because, sometimes with the podcast, I was told, this was a couple of years ago, we were at a Jacksonville Producers. I've told the story before, but afterwards, the event, because Kristen and Brian allowed me to broadcast live at the Jacksonville Producers thing. I did it a couple times. It's 2 hours of just on live, right? Like you and I are doing here, but I'm standing there, and just anyone going by, I'm grabbing, talking, like kind of like a red carpet thing, right? And afterwards, I brought them over to close out the live stream, and I'm like, hey, how'd it go, Brian, Kristen? And Brian's like, people think you're like a celebrity. They're afraid to approach you. I'm like, whoa. So I might be doing it too much at that point. But you were 100% right. I think that is the true test. And I don't think everyone's ever said that, but it's true. You go to a social gathering, and someone who you may not talk to all the time comes up to you and says, hey, because they are seeing your face all the time on the social media, talking about, whatever it may be with real estate. Let's talk about the Willie Lane Group. At what point did you go from Willie Lane to the Willie Lane Group? When did you start wanting to expand again? And the reason why I ask this question is, maybe you can lead the answers to it, is I feel there's a lot of agents out there who have maximized what they can do as an individual. They're really good pretty much as any time in the day as one person can do, because they're doing all their transaction coordinating, they're doing all their marketing, everything, and they reach that, I call it the lid. And then it's just like they max out. Somewhere, I think it's sub 10 million, somewhere between 7 to 10 million. Also, they're just maxed. Tell us how you evolved the group, and then you've brought other people on, and what's that done to your business?
It's funny, you clearly have heard this story before, because you nailed it on the volume.
Yeah.
When you get, I reached a sales volume, and at one point I remember having like 15 contracts at one time. And I remember telling a neighbor of mine who was also in real estate, including my wife too, but yeah, I was like, this is just, I need help. And I went on like that for like an easy 6 months, probably 18 months, or like, I need help. And I just didn't know how to get it. I tried the transaction coordinator once or twice, and I don't know. I certainly needed the help. And I was at the lid of, I can't take on any more business where I am stretched thin. My goal was to always provide that level of service to each client as they expect and as I expect. And when you have that many contracts at one time, it becomes tough to do, and you have to make sure you do it. It was about 4 or 5 years ago, probably 5 years ago, I decided I just finally decided to go ahead and find that help I needed as far as finding an assistant, what I really wanted was an assistant, an all-around, just all-encompassing personal and business. Like, I don't have time to take my dry cleaning to drop it off. Like, I just didn't,
right.
Or it seems that way at least, right? And so, I hired, really what I wanted was a full-time assistant. And so I hired one of my good buddies to be a team member. He got licensed, but I really wanted him was to be an assistant, and I felt bad. He was my guinea pig. Shout out to Willie Austin. So honestly, people make jokes about working with your best bud. It ended up being fine, luckily. But that was my guinea pig. But I realized there that, what I do need, is a transaction coordinator. I have an assistant, and I want a team member who's licensed. And that's where it started, Willie Lane Group. And that's really, I think today is the model I hold. I want someone who has some experience at least to come in. I tried the new agent stuff. That's tough to do. It takes a lot off the plate, or adds too much to the plate when it's really supposed to be taking off at a certain point, or at least.
You mean bringing on a new agent onto the team, and then you're trying to coddle them?
A brand new agent to the industry. It's very tough to do when they don't otherwise have any experience. Because there's so much just so much to know, and so much to learn, and it takes so much. It adds so much to my plate when I'm really, want to train these agents and bring them up, and I'm always there for them. But at a certain point, it does alleviate some of the. I can't be in two places at one time. And so someone who has some experience can go handle things and for the team lead, and then I can handle things for them in turn, But starting the Willie Lane Group was a long process, or like a long time in the works, in the making. And here we are with, I think, a model that's sustainable now. So
how long were you in the business before you started to get these 10, 15 deals at the same time and started to, I think for most people, 3 or 4, they're starting to overwhelm, let alone 10, 15. What kind of time period are we talking about here now?
Yeah, that's about, it must have been 2019, 2020.
Yeah.
2020, I would call it. And so that was 5 years ago. And so, 19, 20. And that's when I was like stressing about needing some help and just didn't seek it, or didn't go out to find an assistant or whatever it was. And then I finally just started the group. What
I find interesting is this is not new to the real estate business. I've talked to so many different agents that are at different chapters of their careers. Some have only been in the business a few years doing really well. You've been in it, 12, 13 years or whatever, you're there. And I've obviously talked to like Mandy, who's been in it a couple of decades. And everyone has graduated up to this point where they reached a lid. And yet we still have agents out there who are scrambling and trying to find out, well, what do I do next? Even though if someone actually wrote a book, they would have this as one of the chapters of the real estate, the life of a real estate agent, a career or whatever. And the importance of it, I imagine you probably went for some advisement on what to do. Who were some of the people that you spoke to and some of the people that really gave you good advice on how to structure this?
Yeah. The advice, I did speak with some others who were more peers than they were maybe like mentors, etc. I spoke to some that, I think they just encouraged me to get an assistant, really. And that was kind of the team thing. When I started at Berkshire with Prudential at the time, wasn't a thing. At least they didn't encourage the team structure. There was one team, maybe, I think, my entire 8-9 years I was there.
Right.
And so I was unfamiliar with how that structure looked. So I had no idea. And so we had a broker at Compass, office manager, I suppose he was former. He had successfully run huge teams out in Colorado. And, I leaned on him a lot. And I was like, so what does the structure look like? How does this? Right. Yeah, sure. I was at the offices and we'd have the weekly or whatever, bi-weekly sales meetings, and, we'd go over a handful of topics. So that was sort of already in the back of my mind. And then I just so once I spoke with my office manager, he gave me some tips on how to operate with a team. Then I took my prior experience and just kind of what did it look like when I was a new agent at my office,
right?
And what do we do there? Okay, I actually went back I kept a lot of my materials just in folders, like I don't know why, but I've got these boxes full of files, and I went back and found some old training programs or training materials, and I had my assistant take those and put my header on it, or team logo and team name, and tweak a few things. She's really good at technology. I'm terrible at this stuff.
Yeah.
Her strengths are my weaknesses, vice versa. So anyways, we took these training materials and that's kind of
structured.
Yeah, exactly right.
But I know Keller Williams, and not saying they are the only ones, because I know Christina Welch very well, and she's always told me she has played the Keller Williams playbook. Mm-hmm. They have a playbook for that. And I guess I want to express across, because you're perfect, because you used the word guinea pig before, but you're a perfect example of someone who grew their business to basically you're pulling your hair out with 15 deals at the same time, live. That agents who are in this business who may not have hit the lid yet should start talking to people. If you're going to stay in this business and you're doing well, the longer you stay in it, obviously, the more people you touch and your business starts to snowball. I don't know anyone, unless they just refuse to work. But if you're putting in the work ethic, which you've explained here, you're going to reach that point. So start aligning yourself with some of these people. Start seeing how they're structuring their deals, because it is true there are many teams. And they all have, just like you guys do your real estate business a little different, every one of these teams is structured a little differently.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's true. I think for one, starters, I've heard that, some agents or maybe some brokerages encourage you just out of the gates to get a transaction coordinator. I don't really believe that. I think you should cut your teeth and learn learn how to communicate with title, lenders, the other agents to obtain documents. How do you ask for them in the proper way?
Yeah.
At what point in the transaction do you ask for them? That's important to know.
Yeah.
How do you have how do you run a successful real estate, business and have never done those things? I just think that that's important to know. So I think I do encourage those new agents or newer agents who have time, rather than not stretched thin yet, to not have the transaction coordinator right away and to work those deals start to finish themselves. Mm-hmm. There comes a time when you should have one, certainly, and that's going to take a lot off your plate and allow you to do what you need to be doing, which is bringing in the new clients, bringing in the new business, and handing off the admin stuff to someone who's be able to work it. So.
It sounds like, because you said you went through some transaction coordinators, you've worked with a handful of different transaction coordinators over the years.
Yeah.
And from what I've gathered talking to so many agents, is everyone has a different vision. Again, just like their businesses are all different, their teams are all different, what they want that transaction coordinator to do is very different. So if you've never cut your teeth and you don't know what they're supposed to do, when you're really producing and you need a transaction coordinator like you can hire one full time because you've got that many deals, you need to know how to align them with the way you do business. Because I think one of the reasons why the failures, and you can agree or disagree with this, maybe you have some insight, you've got to communicate with that transaction coordinator on how you do business and how you want them to support that. What you want them to do, because I may want them to do something a little differently, a little bit more, a little bit less. When do they communicate with you? Is it first thing in the morning, late in the afternoon, Mondays, Fridays, right? I've heard all the different things. So it's very important, I think, to understand what's going on beyond, in the whole transaction, so you can actually communicate.
Yeah, exactly right. And knowing, when that's perfect, Tracy. I mean, that's exactly what you need to know, is be able to tell your transaction coordinator what you want from them, what you expect, et cetera. Knowing, knowing when they should be reaching out to another party to obtain a document or whatever it is, or stay on time, and what they should be saying and how you want them to say it. And those are important pieces. There's sometimes where a transaction coordinator messages someone, or maybe too many times, or like, hey, that's not how I prefer to do it. Let's wait. Let's give them whatever it is.
Right.
There's different nuances that go into that. And I guess I'm pretty particular maybe on how I operate my own business, and not every transaction is the same, but more or less you have a process of your own. And if it works, it works, and you want to be able to express that to somebody and tell them how to.
Well, I think there's a comfortability in your skin, and a transaction coordinator that's been around the block a few times, they can have very confident conversations with your client because they know what's going to happen. They've seen it happen hundreds of times already, and help you foreshadow and all those things that you guys do to make sure the transaction goes through as smoothly as possible. Learning how people communicate. Is your customer a text messenger? I've done complete deals over Facebook Messenger, texting, email. I mean,
Right.
Everyone has a different way they want to communicate, obviously verbally. Some people, want to come in face to face. I don't have that. It's not as often on my side than it is. Obviously, you spend more time face to face.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's different communication styles out there, but yeah, I think that's important. I think just knowing how a transaction works, start to finish, with cash, a loan, what type of loan, VA buyer, FHA, have you done a short sale, a foreclosure, have you worked it all the way through? Those are, man, then you figure out how the industry works.
Yeah.
You figure out now I needed to call the title, but I need to talk to an attorney this time. Or like, more. You
Right.
learn more, and I've probably done it the long way and the hard way. I have. It's just the way I learn in life in general. But, those are important things I believe in. I think that you do some deals on your own before you get a transaction coordinator. I'm a firm believer of that. You learn more that way, and then you know better how to communicate with a transaction coordinator, a team, et cetera, in the future when you do get busy enough to have those people in place.
So we're talking about the process. So let's dig into your ideology for those clients who've maybe never worked with you before. Maybe you're training your team on just the way, some of the things that you feel are very important and have proven, I'm sure there's a lot of things you do up front to make sure, foreshadowing, setting expectations, all those things so that transaction goes through. So when you're going out, I think listings are, I imagine you're probably sitting on a bunch like everybody else is right now. Talk a little bit about the conversation you like to have when you go into a listing appointment with someone you've never met before, you weren't referred, so you can't really cut corners. You got to give the full presentation. Mm-hmm. What's your mindset going in? What are you doing prior to actually going over there and then the meeting itself?
Yeah, prior to, it's really was the conversation with the client, right? And finding out about the property, about who they are, the story, so you're prepared. Your material's prepared. Obviously we have a pre-prepared, I guess, pitch book, if you will, but it's just about us, about the team, what we offer, etc. Then I can supplement the customized pages or materials in there for the client. And yeah, sure, I'd like to mention something about the market somewhere in some fashion, right? So if it's a listing appointment, I want to make sure I meet them and see the property before I really give kind of hard numbers or anything else really that's concrete. I want to talk to them and see them in person. My biggest thing is getting the appointment and being there, and that's when we can really show our genuineness, and through that you gain the trust, and that's all we're there for. I have the experience, knowledge, and we offer a lot, but there's other agents who offer a similar set of skills, and the good ones in town, they do. And so what sets you apart? It's getting there and getting their trust, because they consider someone else and also probably trust someone else who's just as successful or more, right? So I think it's getting that client to trust you, and I think personally I do best in face-to-face, in the moment, and setting expectations.
So you're constantly going in there, because you mentioned trust very early on. in our talking about. So that's the number one thing, getting people to trust you before they're going to give you business,
Right.
before they're going to refer you business. And in this case, what are some things that you like to do? And I imagine, as any sales, you build the routine. Obviously, you change it, you cater it to the customer who's sitting in front of you, like what questions you may ask. But what is your mindset, when you go and you sit there to build that trust? Because I would guess it's not just, I call it verbal diarrhea, just all these numbers and all this stuff. You understand, I need to build this person's trust. Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that you do to do that?
I guess what I do sometimes to give away some tricks, I'll tell them, look, the next guy down the road is going to tell you a higher price to list it for. And that seems pretty attractive, right, Tracy? Mm-hmm. Well, that's not always the case, and here's the pitfalls of doing so. And I tell them, look, this is maybe not the most sexiest price or maybe not exactly what you wanted to hear, but this is the price I believe is going to be a selling price, what's going to get us positioned correctly on the market to sell. And that's, they want to, I find for the most part, sellers want to hear something to that effect. There's some that just don't. They
have a number in their head.
They have a number in their head, or whatever it is, and hey, this guy's gonna sell for more, or whatever, and
mm-hmm.
I mean that's fine. Maybe they don't, whatever, but I did get the business, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. I'm not gonna sell a house to everybody. I realize that, but that's something I do. I walk in and during the meeting, during the process, and whether they have, maybe my number does align with them, maybe it's lower than what I actually came out with, but I do explain to them, I don't know what others are telling you, but this is what I've come up with my own analysis of the market, and again. Some guy down the road may come in here with a lower commission price, a higher price to list, and that may be more attractive, I understand. But this is what I believe is going to be the key. The
key to success.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mandy enough. I assume you guys have been working together for a few years. She was talking on her show, and it really makes sense. Not that she's the first person that mentioned it, but really going fairly deep with a customer. One, to gain the trust mm-hmm. that you're talking about, but also in conversation, that one little extra question is going to just get you a little bit closer to understanding, the importance of what their actual goals are, which oftentimes are not on their sleeve. You have to actually ask a few questions to dig a little bit to get that kind of hidden goal that only they talk about mm-hmm. if they've, the husband and wife have even talked about it,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't. Maybe Mandy has more of a precise way of doing so. I'm not sure if I do. I go in there and have a conversation. Mm-hmm. And that's really kind of what we're there for. And, again, that shows your genuineness. I believe there's two things I keep talking about, but there's things I think are most important. Yeah, as far as getting to know their story, I wear it on my sleeve, Mm-hmm. And so I think sometimes that helps bring it out of others, though, I think if I tend to do that. And so I think others feel more comfortable and putting it on their sleeve if they don't already. And so that's been helpful to kind of dive down and dig deeper into what they're really looking for, and because that's what we want to know is what are you really looking for? What are we? What's going to make you most satisfied in this transaction?
Right. With today's market, we're July of 2025. It's a buyer's market. A lot of top agents are sitting on double-digit listings. Some of them, teams are sitting on 100 listings right now, big teams and so forth. What are you doing? What are you coaching your team members in the sense of properly setting expectations? Because I don't think people realize, non-real estate agents don't realize, every day that house sits out there, you guys are there's a level of stress that you have. Mm-hmm. Another week goes by, another weekend goes by, another open house, and maybe you're getting some offers, but they're soft or no offers at all. Mm-hmm. What kind of conversation are you having with those sellers right now? Because I imagine you probably have a few of these.
Pricing is the key. Pricing, I think, is the number one single factor in getting your home sold. There's a lot. There's the marketing, there's this and that. Pricing is the number one singular factor in selling your home quickly and the highest price. And right now it's unfortunately you have to maybe come in under what others are listed for, maybe another one sold for. Mm-hmm. And that's hard to swallow or hard to accept. So as far as coaching my team, we drill down on price, and it's not, we want to push the envelope, and we always do. Mm-hmm. But that's, we need to be mindful about where we price, and that's the most important key factor. After pricing, it's positioning, the home for on the market for sale. I mean, it's the marketing piece is also huge, and it's going back now because homes are, days of markets longer now have increased, and so, we're going back to the basics of real estate. We're going back when I started in 2013 when things were, the average days of market was like 90 days or whatever it was then, right? So,
now, the people are panicking at 30.
You're like, oh, it's been forever. I'm like, well, it really, relatively, it has not been that long. And so, but we'll keep your faith, and then trust the process, and we'll get there. But I think if pricing is number one and marketing is number two, and from there, there's other things.
I mean, again, talking to some other agents, what you're at, and those who are listening, like you say, the price is, you could go in and offer that competitive price, but I know there's parts of this town, like you can go over to Nocatee and there's a dozen $1 million homes. Okay, well, first of all, when you put million behind your price point, you're in a different category of client. But then this fact that you're, 5 years ago, $1 million home was a rarity. Now it's common, right? And to have multiple $1 million homes, at least here in Northeast Florida, maybe in California, that in areas it's common, but in a general planned urban development like Nocatee, to have $1 million homes when they're not custom built, and you're competing against dozens, let alone a builder who's not that far away, still building homes, and to set the price point to get showings. Because you could set the price point, and I hear from a lot of agents, it might be a great home, but if you're overpriced, no one even bothers to come by.
We just had to pull a condo off the market, and others were like, oh, you should stage it. Well, we didn't have a showing. The problem wasn't having showings and we're not selling. We couldn't get anybody in the door. That's a price issue.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and there's reasons why maybe we go with a different price. It's not our suggestion. It's maybe the clients, and there's a need for it, et cetera. But yeah, I think pricing is a big piece to it. I've had listings recently where they're in the subdivision where the builder still, D.R. Horton or whoever, still has 140 units to go, and we've got to put ours on the market, and we have to make how much out of this because the client bought it a year ago, and it's tough. Yeah. It's quite tough.
Do you sell a lot of new construction? Your team, what would you say your percentage of new construction is?
Well, and I'm lucky enough. I've got a great builder I've kind of grown up with. Not grown up. I mean, in my career, I've grown up with. It took me a few years to earn his business, and now we've got it. And so he does new constructions, primarily the beaches area.
Okay. More custom built.
He'll do both. He would do all.
Okay.
Just custom.
He's not the big publicly traded.
No. He's a smaller, but we'll do spec houses. We'll identify properties, kind of lock them down, and we'll do multi-units, or we'll do several specs. Yeah, sure. No, we work with new construction. We'll be in, we've sold Lennar and ICI and all those others, and Seven Pines and Tamai and all those other.
When working with the tract builders, your big public who got 140 more units to build, I think people have found out here, especially recently, to have that conversation with that buyer, say, how long do you see yourself here? Because if you're only going to be here a year or two and they got 140 more units to go, you're going to be in a hard situation, especially, I think anyone selling to a veteran right now, or an active duty member, I should say, who could likely get moved in a year or two, putting them in new construction, unless it's the last couple of houses in that complex or subdivision, steer them away because you're putting them in a bad spot.
Exactly. Those are the questions you ask. I mean, I think, again, this goes back to maybe having some experience, which I know for those may not have that experience, but you got to ask questions, and maybe if you don't, maybe you talk to a mentor or somebody who can look at the set of questions you just went over with your client and kind of help identify the best places for you to search for or purchase, right? Just like you talked about, we don't want to put a veteran in a new construction community where it's like D.R. Horton, they still have, again, half the community to build out, and you're getting a unit, and a year later,
2 years in, they're having to come out with money out of their pocket if they didn't put any money down.
You got paid to sell it. I mean, like literally pay. I mean, you're in the red. So that's important. But yeah, it's something to look at. You want to know, again, the market. You want to know the areas of town. You want to know kind of what's going on with the inventory and all sorts of things. Try to forecast if you can. It's hard. We don't have a crystal ball.
Still staying on the new construction topic.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's inspections. Do you recommend to have an inspector from start to finish, especially on these track builds?
Yeah, I certainly do.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot with I've seen a lot. So this fun I've had an inspector actually kind of get into it with one of the supers on site and these good old country boys. I'm like, man, you're gonna get beat up here in the parking lot, buddy. Be careful, you know.
Yeah.
These guys, they don't love the inspectors, but I really think it's important, you know, because they're calling out things that these other guys are kind of used to just doing on every other build.
I don't understand myself because it's one thing. There's these, we know some of these big builders have multiple subdivisions in Northeast Florida, but the amount of slabs being poured and all that stuff, it's not happening so fast that they could not have one or two quality control people to go out and actually do the internal inspection themselves to make sure the plumbing's put in the slab and all that stuff like it should, and the toilet is spaced properly, distanced from the shower, that you're not literally got to put one leg in the tub.
You'd like to think that they have a quality control guy or someone doing that. Maybe they do, but it's like proofreading your own work. Maybe they're going to look at the same slab because there's how many 200 something units in the neighborhood, and they're like, they see the same thing, like, oh, it looks fine because it looks the same as the last one they just looked at, and then it's just. Yeah, I don't know.
Interesting. There's no doubt there is. A lot of this stuff is done in an office, design the house or whatever. They're never actually out at that lot to see how that house is actually going to be positioned and so forth. Because, I'm sure you've seen it. We had a good friend buying new construction. It was the last house in the neighborhood actually. And the way it positioned, they wanted the windows facing out to the retention pond, which everyone would, not the house turned around facing the house next to it and looking at someone's walls. And from what I understand, there's some of these builders, they're putting all this nice glass in, and all you're doing is you're looking at the neighbor's side of their house.
Yeah. It's designed in the office, and they didn't, right. Yeah. It's going to go on the lot, but they don't know the lot.
Yeah, and how it's positioned. Right. So, yes, having a good real estate agent who's on top of those things, and let alone hiring getting a recommendation for an inspector from start to finish on these new constructions, because there's the inspectors that I've had on, there's no doubt if you get lucky and catch it during the first year, a possible warranty issues, but after that you're on your own, brother.
You are, and again, like I said, the supers, man, they'll push back, and so you need an agent who also is going to push back against them. Hey, no, it's not right, actually, and I don't care. I mean, me and the inspector noted it. You're pushing back, and well, I can agree with that. It doesn't look right, So, anyways, it's important to have that on your side.
Yeah. Sometimes you don't even need just a truly licensed inspector, or just someone to go out and look at it and go, dude, that doesn't look right.
It could be that simple.
Oh man, we'll finish here these last 10-15 minutes here. Just kind of recap some things, maybe bring up some topics to the agents that are listening and so forth. You've been in the business over a dozen years. You've come through some markets. You've seen the crazy, you started on the upswing as housing started to get back. Kind of I don't know if it was a plateau, but it just made a gradual. Then all of a sudden, 2021, it's crazy. You're getting multiple offers, and now we're back, into this, I think obviously the interest rates are slowing things around. Because would you believe that? Do you agree the demand of buyers is out there, and I think there's a demand of sellers who aren't selling right now because the rates are too high. So they're like, well, if I go over there, I'm not going to get much more home, and I'm going to pay more because the interest rate I'm going to get now versus what I have. There's a lot of pent up demand on both sides right now.
There is. Look, the market, it really isn't bad. It's a good market. I got to say, it's definitely different than where we were a few years ago. Right. Some of those rates are fictitious almost. I mean, you would agree. At least it'll be hard to ever see 3s again.
Yeah.
4s again.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be surprised if we see 5s.
I've said it 1,000 times on the show. We get below 6, where we could do a 5.875 30-year fix. It'll be a frenzy.
It's gonna be a frenzy.
Yeah.
If we see the 5s again, wow.
Yeah.
It's buckle up. What was the question?
Well, you agree with me on that part, but the pent-up demand of that, we do have a lot of sellers and we do have a lot of buyers that are sitting on the sidelines, even though business is going on, which you said the business is good. There are agents who are listening right now, I can guarantee it, that, obviously they showed up in 2021. They were doing deals because as soon as you stuck the sign in the yard or you said the Post-it note on the doors of the house, people were, making offers. Right. But we've noticed, 70-something% of the agents didn't even do a deal in 24.
Yeah.
Why do you think agents like yourself are still thriving where a lot of agents who were doing good have dropped off?
Yeah, well, I think it's really maybe the number of years and having the sphere right now where at least I have a good book of business that's coming and being referred to me, etc. Okay, but I think it's positioning and adjusting to the market, and I think there's a way to do that that's sustainable and that continues your growth in your career. There's different ways to do that. Certainly, if you're selling a home in this kind of market where inventory is increased, days on market's increased, buyer demand is well pent up. It's buyers are on the sidelines, at least half of them maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about positioning the listing on the market correctly, and there's different ways. There's different factors that go into that. The buy side, getting someone to pull the trigger, it's really, there's always a need to buy or sell. Okay, there's always those usual needs. Job transfer, divorce, whatever it is. Those things happen in life, right? But getting to someone, and again, I don't want to sell a house to anyone. I don't need to sell a house. I want them to buy a house that they want, and then I'm going to go do my job, get them that house, right? That's really sometimes you're going to nudge someone into a house that they didn't realize they wanted, but for the most part,
or needed.
Yeah, right. But I'm not there to sell you a house when you're buying. I want you to find the house that's right for you, and I'm going to go get that house for you and do it right. Okay, but yeah, I think there's a way to get buyers back in the buying game when maybe they're on the sidelines. Is look, the rates are actually they are below historical.
Still historically
average.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, we're actually average. Yeah.
Is it average? Okay.
I think we're about since I've been in the career
like
in
average.
2005 when I started in mortgages and right up to October 2008, the rates, if you saw 5.875, that was an anomaly.
Sure.
Most of the time it was basically 6.25% to 7%.
Okay,
That's
right.
where
Yep.
you saw it in 5 to 8, and until the quantitative easing and the government started buying our own mortgage-backed securities to drive the rates down.
So rates aren't high. They are higher than what they were, but they aren't high.
The prices are higher.
Prices are higher. The prices are higher.
Yeah.
And we can negotiate right now. We can negotiate a lot from the sellers, and sellers, typically they have a reason to sell. That's, and they're not selling so they can go, get a higher rate on another house, right? And to pay more for it. They're selling because they have a reason to and need to. And there's, buyers are in a position to negotiate now. And so that's a way to get buyers off the fence and into the buying game. I
don't hear as much talk right now. The builders are doing it. They're doing their buy downs. They're doing their, they're buying money in blocks and getting it out on the street in a period of time. They figured that game out when they had to in May of 22. I'm not hearing as much talk amongst agents and loan officers pushing the buy down, which I think is a home run right now, and has been. But because we've really moved to a buyer's market, to incentivize the buyer, say, hey, we're going to give you $10,000 to buy that rate down. Somewhere in the next 2 years, the rates will drop, and then you refi from that artificially, semi-permanent, what do I want to say? Temporary buy down, that's what it's called. A temporary rate, and then you jump over to the fixed rate, and when it refis, the rates go below 6, and you're great. But because it's a buyer's market, you can ask for stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
And you should. It depends on really, how many inspection items we need to ask for, right? There's always a limit how far we can push, but you should definitely be asking for have an agent on your side that's going to help you negotiate, incentives as far as your closing costs go, maybe towards a rate buy down. I do think that, or at least I hope that we're going to see the low 6s or maybe upper 5s again.
Yeah.
Right? That's a hope. I don't know if it's going to be true or not, but that'd be great, And so in that case, to your point, Tracy, yeah, you refi. Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And at what point is it about a 1 point difference in your interest rate is when you want to refi, or what?
Depends on how big the loan is. When I started my career at Quicken Loans, now Rocket, if the loan was big enough and the rates dropped enough, and we could drop someone a 0.25% and take $1,500 and do it for no cost. Makes a ton of sense. Oh, you're not going to cost me anything? I go a month without a payment. You refinance me, and my payment comes out $50, $70 less on the other end. Doesn't cost me anything? Great. Lenders can figure that out. It just isn't how much lower they have. So I had a customer actually say, oh, this other lender said they would refi me and not charge me this. I said, sir, that all depends on where the interest rates are. You don't know what the interest rate's going to be when he calls you. It may be 5%. And for anyone who's willing to pay cost, but at 5.375, I got enough credit to pay most or all your cost, and I could call you, and you're at 6 3/8. So 6 3/8 to 5 3/8, no cost. That's a no-brainer.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you could pay cost and get 5%. Well, why would you pay cost? I'm going to wait around until maybe the rates drop again and do another no cost. We were doing no cost refis all over the place.
Wow.
Because during that, especially that time period, of course, Quicken started the service loans at that time, so we had a huge servicing portfolio, buying up GMAC stuff. When the rates started to drop, it was October. I remember it was Halloween of '08. The rates were 6.25. By Thanksgiving, because my wife and I came to this area and we bought a house, we locked in 5 3/8 on a 30-year fix and thought, oh my God, the rates kept dropping. We didn't close to almost the New Year's, right. And the rates kept dropping. And so obviously during that time period, we ended up refinancing. I think one other time, got the rates into a 4s, and then we jumped to a 15-year at 2.75, and we've been in that for, I don't know, I guess at least a dozen years now. We're almost paid off. Yeah, because the payment didn't go up that much when you go to 2.75 versus a 5 3/8, and yeah.
Wow, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, but obviously, one, having a good real estate agent. Good real estate agents got good loan officers with them as a team, and this is the whole process of keeping them incubated within the system of us feeding each other back and forth on that. But yeah, the 2-1 buy down, I think everyone should be talking about that with their sellers. So if you're not having to say, man, let me get with my loan officer and see what a buy down would cost you. And roughly, you're going to find it's going to be about probably like $9 or $10 grand on the average, $500,000-$600,000 home, something like that. And you had a 2-1 buy. I mean, that gets them through, because I think most people have the attitude right now, especially the administration, putting a lot of pressure. I was watching Bloomberg this morning. They're putting a lot of pressure on the Fed to lower the Fed funds rate, even though it's not directly correlated. But there's a number of those Fed chairmen that are going to be talking about it. So really, people think September is going to be for sure. So if you're buying a house right now today, I would float it for a few weeks and see what happens. I would not lock in my interest rate. That's just my personal opinion. It's your money, so you got to make that choice. Yeah, right. But I would float and see, because you have a good chance. If they almost guarantee that Fed funds rate's going to drop, the mortgage rates will drop before that. They're going to predict that if they feel that's where it's going, and the mortgage rates will soften a little bit, and hopefully you get the best rate possible at the day you close.
Yeah, that's great advice, really. And got to think of as the agent, there's a lot of different things that we need to be looking at as far as what the buyer needs. And sometimes we need to negotiate more, and we have to forego a 2-1 buy down or whatever it is, any sort of rate to buy down. But that's a huge piece of, that's definitely huge for a buyer, is having that buy down. That's great advice.
Because you do a lot of stuff out at the beaches area.
Primarily.
Yeah, but insurance has become a bigger factor here in the last really 24 months, I think, than ever before. We used to wait till almost the end of the transaction. Go, oh yeah, we got to get an insurance quote. We're going to close in a week. Now you want to get that insurance quote almost like right after you order the inspection.
It is, really.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's always my process every time. You do the inspection. As soon as I get that 4-point and win MIT back, I send it off to the insurance
person.
And make sure that we're good before we get out due diligence periods. That's just...
Have you run into some things that have come back on you, like the insurance? Because these insurance companies now with technology, they're going in and they know when that water heater was changed out, they know the roof and other things. Or have you had some things kind of come back at you? You had to renegotiate because of insurance?
Yeah, sure. It was the roof. We had one that was a 13-year-old roof. We didn't think there was an issue there, but insurance has increased. It was through all the carriers. They didn't have many options. The options they did were increased premiums, and that was an issue, so we had to go negotiate. And you think 13-year-old roof, what's the deal? That should be fine.
Yeah.
We have at least, a handful of years before they're going to have an issue with it, right? That wasn't the case here. So there's, I think typically, where a roof was older than that and we didn't have an issue, sometimes I can't make heads or tails of it.
Yeah.
But for the most part, insurance it's been tough, and so we need to make sure we navigate correctly. Yeah.
Well, going back to the seller conversation, I would imagine those are some due diligence things that you need to do on the house too, because you're going to prep your seller that, hey, we don't want to get in process, and then boom, they turn back and find you have an 18-year-old roof. So what do you want to do here, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what's going to come back.
And that's what happens a lot too. You close, and then it's not long after closing that they'll say, oh, well, you need to switch this out. You need to change that out. So it's really we would need to get ahead of that for our buyers.
Yeah.
And try to forecast or foresee that coming somehow. That's doable now. We know what we're looking for.
Well, I was talking about, I'm a pre-listing inspection supporter fan, because having been in sales long enough, and I'm sure you've experienced this as well, if you eliminate any possible way because everyone signs that contract, at some point within the next 48 hours, there's some sort of buyer's remorse or question: am I buying the right house? Is this where we really want to live? There's all this is going through their mind, and of course they're listening to all these other people going, "Oh, you should have bought in this neighborhood." Oh, and all this crap, right?
Yeah.
So if their issues come up, it doesn't matter how small they are on that inspection report. It's giving them, that support to say, we want out. So as much as we can eliminate, and now insurance is part of that. The water heater may be fine, but the insurance company's like, well, your water heater is this old, you need to have it replaced. Or like I said, the 13-year-old roof had no issues. There's no leaks. Looked great. There shouldn't be.
Yeah.
But the insurance company comes back. Now there's a reason for them to escape, right? The buyer to escape. Yeah. Mm-hmm. To really prep your sellers with all these things prior to putting it on the market.
Yes, exactly right. And then those are conversations. Those dominate the conversations, quite honestly. But those conversations dominate our time together, really. Mm-hmm. Talking about the age of the roof and how we're going to navigate that when it comes up, or the HVAC or the hot water heater. Really, I mean, it's just silly, but hot water heaters, So
to me, just go and replace it because that's an easy replace. Guy's out in a few hours.
Yeah, exactly right. And it's under $2,000. I mean, if you had the right guy, maybe under $1,000. But that's a relatively affordable when we're talking about the grand scheme item. So it's those kind of conversations dominate our time together as far as what happens when this comes up? We have a feeling this is so. A pre-inspection is always a good idea. We don't necessarily always push for that, but we can talk about all the points in the home. The 4 points plus more that are going to matter, and have an idea of where we're positioned when that time comes for the inspection. So
I heard something the other day, and this might be hopefully the learning lesson for the agents who might be listening, and then even the buyers and sellers who possibly could be listening this far in. This agent had, I won't mention her name, but she had this beautiful home because I actually went to it one day with her for an open house over in Nocte, $1 million. A little bit more than the $1 million price point, just over. The people made an offer on it, but they found out, through the inspection or whatever, that there was a leak. They fixed it, but they didn't put on their, what do they call it, the seller's disclosure. Oh, yeah. They did is the seller disclosure optional?
It is. Short answer.
Yes. Yes. So they did. I guess they had done one, but just life goes on. Like, okay, we had a leak fixed, right? And that wasn't any major, reconstructive surgery of the house, and that was their ticket out. So it's doing those. I think sitting down with your seller, and I think you would agree, to build trust with the seller is working through all these. This is what we're going to do if this happens. This is what we're going to do if that happens. If they come back on this, we're going to, either we're going to fix it now, or this is what we're going to do when it happens.
Yeah, it's funny because I always like to say we'll cross these bridges when we get there for just most things. Because there's so many different moving parts in the transaction. Let's just cross this one bridge and we'll cross that one when we get there. But honestly, been having so many conversations where we're playing hypotheticals and doing those and running the scenarios. Like, okay, well, if we get here, then what? And well, if this, then what do we do when they ask for this? Or we're having a lot of those conversations. And, again,
well, especially in pricing. If we go 3 weeks without an offer, this is what we need to do.
Yeah, and it's like, hey, well, during the inspections, if they come ask for this, then are we going to respond with that? Do we hold this back so we can use that as a leverage piece to add in? Well, we're going to do the irrigation because we were going to do that anyways. We'll hold that back, and so it's really like this whole
throw in the golf cart. We're going to throw in the golf.
Yeah. I mean, there's those things that it's so funny. It's so case by case. Yeah. But we're having a lot of those hypothetical conversations where, if this, then what? So.
Well, it goes back to hiring a professional to do it. And this is just my perception. The reason why 70% of the agents didn't do a deal is because there's some level that they're not getting to, that people like yourself, many others that are out at your Compass office, if there's any one office that has truly some, a good group of heavy hitters in town, they're doing something different. And I think for the agent, if you're struggling right now, you're 2 or 3 years in, or maybe you're 10 years in, if you've gone stale for whatever reason, you need to go and find someone like you or the Mandy and others in your office. What are they doing differently? And I bet it's having these deep conversations and strategizing, and people are going, oh, this person knows their stuff.
Yeah, if you are listening and this far on the podcast, thank you very much. But I also will say, if you're kind of earlier on in your career, have some experience and have questions, though, I'm always willing to answer your questions. Just sit down and have a coffee. Just talk real estate anytime. That makes me happy and I enjoy it. Helping others and giving some advice. But also, I like a small group, but hey, we'd always use a great newer hungry agent who wants to work, and that's I want to align myself with people who want to work. I mean, I don't want you to work because you want me to work. I want you to want to work because you really want to work. And so anyways, if you're listening and you have some experience, maybe you're going stale or things are a bit slower, you want to take the next step, maybe I can provide a platform for you that can elevate your business, But hey, if anything, I'm here for advice.
How important it is, and I don't know if you're tapping into it, but I know that was one of the things, I told me my wife went out and signed up with Compass here recently, is being the fifth person in the room. And being in an office where you do have just, like people like Mandy with just years of experience. I know I've had Shelby on the podcast before. Yeah, these people that, and the word I want to use is collaboration. Like you were just talking about, hey, you want to have coffee and just strategize. You want to get into the beaches market. Everyone wants to do luxury homes, right? As everyone, drinks is a higher price point. But the way to be there is to learn how to, I think it was Sharon Mills says, you want to sell luxury, you need to know everything about it. You need to know everything about that home, in and out, how the trash compactor works, how all these things that luxury homes have. Yeah. You need to know all these little things, but they also hang out with others who are selling that price point as well to collaborate.
The conversations are different with those type of agents who are really producing at a high level. The conversations are different. You watch them in the office and they're doing things differently than others. And it's, I think being around that environment is really important. And that's where you learn a lot, just even seeing it, being a fly on the wall. But, I think more so if you can be in that environment and have the opportunity to reach out and ask a few questions here and there, maybe even extend the conversation where you sit down with somebody and for coffee or whatever, it's pretty invaluable.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a few agents, you don't necessarily have to mention their names, but are some of the first people you call to and you get thrown a curveball or something you haven't seen yet?
Oh, it's to this day?
Yeah,
or back in the day?
Well, throughout your you've learned to have that.
I will tell you, I will shout out to Don Klein, greatest manager broker ever. He's just the reason I stuck around Berkshire Hathaway, even though I love the brokerage itself. But man, that man means a lot to me in my career, personally and professionally. So. Yeah, there's others. There's John Bade back in the day. I just sit by his desk. He's always in the office, though. He's sitting at his desk, so I just sit there and ask questions. But he was a wealth of knowledge for me on these other deals that otherwise did not work. But even now today, I have a business partner, Natalie. We have partnered on some very nice listings and projects together. So I want to thank her. She has about 5 to 7 years on me as far as in the business,
right?
And she's been fantastic. She's a high producer, and I've learned a lot from her just in our short time of kind of partnering up together. Yeah, so that's been great. Yeah,
I think it just reiterates it is surrounding yourself by those others, not only to push you to doing things, but you're not competing, because everyone you competing against Mandy. She's at a different chapter in her life, in her career, and I think you'd agree there's plenty of business out there, but to get more is not by taking away from someone. It's you getting better, that it's going to come to you.
Oh, 100%. It's going to come to you. And you just put your head down and trust the process, roll up your sleeves, that kind of work. It's not rocket science. It really isn't rocket science. And it's just improving everything, your knowledge. And that's the biggest key to it, is improving your knowledge, staying genuine, and being in the right environment.
Anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, Tracy, man. This is great.
I appreciate you coming by. Yeah.
This is great. That's awesome, man.
Yeah. I got something. We're going to talk about some properties for your builder here after I shut the recordings off, but I appreciate you coming by today.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
This may be it for today's episode of Real Estate Excellence, but we both know your pursuit of excellence doesn't stop here. To connect with the best of the best and really take your skills to the next level, join our community by visiting TracyHayesPodcast.com, where you'll meet more like-minded individuals looking to expand their inner circle and their personal experience. That's available at TracyHayesPodcast.com.